Hello everyone. I am a person who is insanely in love with all kinds of power tools. I buy them for a convenient reason or no reason at all, for reviews, personal use at the request of friends, and sometimes for resale. I try to buy almost all cordless tools to fit the Makita battery standard, usually 18 volts. The modern Chinese market offers us very good quality brushless tools for relatively little money. But they have one problem: the battery. Often, the included batteries do not have the claimed capacity and current output. For some weaker tools, they are of course fine. But when it comes to angle grinders, powerful drills, or impact wrenches, they run out quickly, heat up, and in general are not an option. The included chargers for such tools are also a problem. In reality, no matter how they look, their maximum charging current is small, from 0.7 amps to 1 amp. In general, today I decided to make a proper high-capacity and high-current battery for powerful tools for my personal needs. I'll start by saying that initially, I even wanted to make a homemade case and printed several options on a 3D printer. But then I decided to use a factory-made case after all. It's less hassle with it. As I mentioned earlier, these types of batteries are 18 volts. This version is two-tiered with increased capacity and current output. In each of these batteries, you will find 10 lithium-ion batteries of the 18650 standard connected in series. The battery configuration is 5S, 2P, with an average voltage per cell of 3.7 volts and 4.2 volts when fully charged, and an average battery voltage of 18.5 volts, or 21 volts when fully charged. Inside each of these batteries, there is a BMS board. It is designed to protect the battery from deep discharge, overcharge, and short circuits. Some boards can also provide cell balancing to equalize the charge, as well as temperature protection. Often, in cheap batteries, the protection board is not great, lacking balancing and thermal protection. There are cases available for sale with the protection board that closely resembles the original Makita. But they may not fit many clones, and this option is more universal for a range of replicas. That's why I decided to use the concept of budget batteries. By the way, similar complete batteries for budget tools have a capacity of 2 to 2.5 amp hours and a discharge current of 7 to 10 amps. At currents higher than this, they heat up significantly. Our new battery should have a capacity of about 6 amp hours, which is almost 3 times higher than the complete ones, and a discharge current of up to 20 amps for extended periods. Grinders and powerful screwdrivers under load can consume currents of 20-30 amps and above. Which cells should be used? The ideal option is molybdenum cells with a capacity of 2.8 amp hours and a discharge current of 20 to 30 amps, and considering a 2P configuration, the battery currents will be around 40 to 60 amps. But these things are expensive, although they are one of the best solutions on the market. The original VTC6 from Murata is also an ideal option, but again, they are expensive and often counterfeited. The only remaining popular option is the chocolates from LG, specifically the 18650HG2. If the battery is original, its specifications are quite good. But there are a lot of used and rebranded counterfeits on the market. That is, the shrink wrap looks almost the same, but the battery itself is completely different. At my own risk, I bought 10 of these cells from the popular Litokala. This brand is very ambiguous for me. Litokala can be decent or outright junk. But apparently this time I got lucky and the cells turned out to be, you could say, decent, but nevertheless, not original. There are, of course, a bunch of ways to distinguish a fake battery from an original, but all these methods are not always applicable because with each passing time the fakes look more like the original. And used batteries are still around too. So, we'll start by testing them. According to the technical documentation, these batteries have an average capacity of 3 ampere hours. This is actually a very respectable figure. The minimum discharge voltage is 2 volts, but I wouldn't recommend discharging below 2.5 volts. The average weight of the battery is 45 grams. In my case, they came with welded tabs. The maximum discharge current is 20 amperes, although it can be 30, but that's for the original. This graph shows the capacity a cell will deliver at different discharge currents. Let's choose a value of 15 amperes. Considering the configuration of our battery is 2P, this will be 30 amperes. For the battery, we install our battery in the power holder and connect it to the electronic load using a 4-wire scheme. to compensate for losses in the power wires. We set the discharge current to 15 amperes and the discharge termination voltage to 2 volts. At the end of the discharge, we see a delivered capacity of 2.9 ampere hours, which is generally normal when compared to the graph. I also measured the temperature in the middle and at the end of the discharge, and it, well, as you can see, around 70 degrees, that's quite a lot. The room temperature at that time was around 25 degrees Celsius. In reality, to heat the battery like that, you would need to run the power tool at full load for a very long time. The internal resistance of the cells ranges from 22 to 26 milliohms. Such a variation is undesirable, and the internal resistance is higher than it should be. But what can you do? By the way, here's the internal resistance of the original SG2, and it's half that of the Litokala. This means the original can deliver higher currents and will heat up less in the process. All batteries were charged to a voltage of 4 and 2 volts before assembly, and then all 10 pieces were connected in parallel for balancing, leaving it like this for about 4 to 6 hours. No need to complicate things like I did. It's better to connect them in parallel properly. Next, you need to remove all the strips and clean the spots from the old welding. Then, on the positive terminals, paper insulators were glued to avoid accidental short circuits. Then the cells were placed in a holder from an old battery. Next comes the welding. For welding, I will use nickel-plated steel tape with a thickness of 0.12 and a width of 10 millimeters. I placed the tape in 2 layers. Of course, you can use thicker tape, but I didn't have 0.15, and my spot welding machine wouldn't handle thicker tapes. The BMS board, it was purchased separately. It's quite good. Provides, among other things, thermal protection as well. The thermistor should ideally be glued to the cells with a thermally conductive adhesive, but Captain, tape will do. This board has signal and power wires. I will replace the power wires with double 16 gauge wires and silicone heat-resistant insulation. The stock wires also have the same insulation. Connect the cells, starting with the power negative. The battery is ready. Additionally, I covered all the soldering points with glue. Final tests. We charge the battery to a voltage of 21 volts using a laboratory power supply. Next, discharge with an electronic load. The discharge current is 1 or 6 amps. I set the discharge cutoff voltage to 8 volts, which is extremely low, but it was done this way so that it specifically triggers the cutoff by the BMS. In the end, the battery delivered almost 5.8 amp hours of capacity. The BMS disconnects at a voltage of 2.7 volts per cell. Then I charged the battery again and discharged it with a current of 19 amps. The electronic load doesn't allow more, hitting the limits. In terms of power, I monitored the temperature from time to time, and the battery would have managed, but after a while the temperature protection on the BMS activates. Here in front of you are all the temperatures at a discharge current of 19 amps. Each cell can be charged with a nominal current of 1.5 amps or 3 amps for the battery, and in accelerated mode with a current of 4 amps per cell or 8 amps for the battery. Remember, we have a 2P assembly. I decided to set the charging current to an average of 3 and 2 amps and monitor the temperature. The battery practically did not heat up, but the diodes on the BMS board heated up to over 90 degrees, which is not surprising. A pair of diodes work on charging at 40 volts 1 amp. That is, a maximum charging current of more than 2 amps is undesirable. Next to the diodes there is a MOSFET transistor, which heated up to 80 degrees. But probably this heat from the diodes is warming it. Knowing all the main parameters, it's time to start removing this label and making a new one with the actual characteristics of the battery. Now everything is ready. After several charge-discharge cycles, I measured the voltage on each cell, and to my surprise, the variation is very minimal. You could say it's non-existent. The board is working perfectly. The only thing left is to solve the charging issue. As I mentioned at the beginning, the standard chargers for cheap tools don't provide more than 1 amp of charging current. And that's actually a good thing. It increases the battery's lifespan. More capacity will be filled. But 6 hours of charging can sometimes be unbearable. So we'll be making our own powerful charger. But as one mustached old man said, however, that's already a completely different story. This video is coming to its logical conclusion. All useful links, including links to my other YouTube channels where videos are released regularly, can be found in the description. I would greatly appreciate your subscription. And with that, that's all from me. Don't forget to rate this video. And with you as always was Kasyan of Ka. And until we meet again, bye.